So in this lecture, we're going to look at building a research proposal. As part of your final assignment to create a research proposal for your thesis, we'll look at what are the important pieces of a research proposal, why it is done in thesis development, and a couple of the key aspects that you'll need to think about, especially as you do a qualitative or a quantitative study. First, let's talk about what a research proposal is. A research proposal is really a plan for the research report. It is initiated and developed before the study begins. I know a couple of you are in sort of a different place with this, with having to do this class after having collected some data, but I think that it is still important for you all because it helps you to organize your thesis. So whether you've already collected data or if you're at the beginning stages of the process, it's a really good opportunity to reorganize the material that you have for your thesis, and it helps for those of you who are new to develop a framework for your overall project. So a research proposal is really a formal description of how you plan to investigate that research problem that you identified at the beginning of our course. So in the proposal, the researchers write really about what they will do as opposed to what they have done. So you're going to organize your research proposal in terms of what you plan to do versus what you've already done. In the proposal, you won't have, obviously a complete results section, especially for those of you who are new. You'll be kind of describing what you hope you will find versus what you actually have found from your results. And typically this stops around methods and procedure. So the section after the methodology section that you've all completed will be a section on results. So you won't have that section in your research proposal, but you'll have it in your final thesis. And really, a full study includes the future research directions and results, and that's at the step where, your data has already been kind of collected and analyzed. So for us, we're stopping at that part where we go through methods and kind of what you think you're going to be doing to collect and analyze your data. Now, why is it important to do a research proposal? So the first step is that it's a major step in conducting research for a graduate program and also for your master's degree. And the skills that you use here are also going to help you, especially if you're planning to work in a school district and think about looking at additional research or grant funding. So obviously, knowing the process of doing a research proposal is useful for those of you who plan to apply for some small grants as teachers or as administrators. It's also helpful to set up a small-scale research study, studies that are conducted in school districts or any other educational settings. And really, whether you're doing your own research or whether you're evaluating someone else's research, the elements that go into it are important for you in terms of the organization of the study. The purpose of the research proposal is really to help the researcher to anticipate any challenges or problems that might occur in the field. So if you're going through your process and you notice that, maybe a participant doesn't get back to you, or you have some issues with the site that you plan to collect your data at. These are some of the things that you can start to identify as you're putting together the procedures that you'll use to collect data. And really, the research proposal provides you a written document that can be shared with other faculty who are serving on your master's committee. So once you have the proposal set up, then they'll kind of get an idea of what you plan to do and can give you suggestions on how to improve your study. It also shows your faculty committee and others that you can read, evaluate, and critique research, just as we've done in this class. And it shows everyone that you are able to sort of defend your own ideas and thoughts about a particular topic that you plan to research. Let's talk about the characteristics of a well-defined proposal. So a well-defined proposal is going to facilitate you in obtaining your permissions. So if you remember from week 1 when we talked about the internal review board, institutional review board, you will recall that we talked about how you need to get some city training as well as complete what's called the IRB review before you start collecting your data at a particular school site or educational setting. So this means obtaining those permissions will be sort of the next step for those of you who are, kind of starting this course at the beginning. So in your next semester, what you'll do is you'll put together more concrete pieces of this research proposal, and those will be the sections that actually go into your IRB application. So this application will help you to obtain the necessary permissions you need to collect your data. It also provides information to those who you're going to be working with, such as, sort of the gatekeepers, the principal, the students, parents, and so forth, that they can help to just sort of determine, what is the impact of the study? Is it useful for us? And, is it going to be helpful for the particular site, such as the school or the university? So those are also important reasons for you to have a well-defined proposal. It also helps to provide criteria for the quality of the overall project. So just as I said with your faculty committee, they can help you to determine, how to make it a strong proposal going forward for your thesis project. It also helps to determine whether it will fulfill its intended goals. So if you have, sort of these ideas of what you hope to find, the research proposal will help you to get there. So let's talk about what's included in the research proposal. Just as an aside, I have put a template for you on Blackboard, so you do have all the necessary sections, and these are the sections that we've been working on throughout this course. So there's no surprises as to what you need to include. However, this is just an overall overview of what is typically included in a research proposal. So let's just go through a couple of the sections here so you know what's expected. In your template, you'll find for both, a qualitative and quantitative format both require that you have a title page. So you'll see in the formatting of that title page that you have what's called a running head at the very top for the heading, and then you have your actual title and information about your school and the date that it was submitted and so forth. You'll also have an abstract. So if you remember from your article critique for this class that you had to do overview of the abstract that was listed for the studies that you used for your critique. So an abstract will just be like a 250 word cross-section basically of your study. So you're going to tell us, sort of in maybe one or two sentences, what is the problem that you're trying to study? What is the purpose of your study? And then sort of what do you hope to find, or how do you plan to collect data for this particular study? So it's, again, very, very short paragraph of just an overview of your study. Then you'll have what you did for us in the beginning of the semester is the introduction, right, with the problem statement and the purpose and research questions, or the hypothesis, right? So if you're doing a quantitative study, you probably will have a hypothesis section also. The theoretical perspective at this point is optional. However, if you already have sort of created that, or you have an idea of what your perspective is going to be, you're welcome to include a theoretical perspective. And then there's also the section called definition of terms. So if you are, defining bullying in a particular way, it's going to impact the way your study goes, right? So you want to think about if there's certain terms that you plan to use in your study, and if you've, done a good job of defining what those terms are. You'll also want to look at, sort of the limitations of your study. We don't have a section in our proposal for this, but it's a good idea just to keep an idea of what you think, your study does and contributes to the existing literature, but also what you can't do, what might be, not feasible for the timeline that you have, or maybe, not feasible for the length of the study or the participants that you have access to, for instance. Then you'll do the review of the literature. So we did that again as well. So that section just goes right after. And then you'll go through the methodology. So what kind of design are you planning to use? Talk a little bit about, if you're doing a qualitative study, the research site that you plan to use, and how you, purposely came up with these particular participants that you want to use. For the quantitative, you want to look at, sort of the instruments that you wanted to include. So, such as a survey, if you did that, or are you doing a type of experiment or intervention? And then we'll also look at what are some of the preliminary results, or findings that you hope to have that come out. For all of you, I've included this piece about a timeline in your presentations and also in your methodology section. You should have a kind of a temporary timeline for yourself. And this, again, can be individualized based on where you are in your program. But it's a good idea to have a timeline to, sort of determine when you hope to finish and what kinds of things, you hope to have done in each semester of your program. And then lastly, this section on references. And I'm not going to make you do, a whole lot on the appendices. The appendices here would be like sample questions from your survey or sample interview questions, or, how you're going to collect your observations if that's what you include. So that section is probably going to be developed in your next semester if you're a beginning student. Or if you've already collected your data, you should already have this section completed. So I'm assuming that in either case, you're going to be okay if you don't have your appendix section. But the references obviously should be in APA format, and as is the entire template that you have access to. So hopefully this just kind of gives you an overall sense of what is included in the research proposal and then why it's an important piece of the overall thesis process.